by assuming common
Already?
descent. Oh, recording in progress. So let's we'll do this later.
Yes.
Anyway, let's Zoom meet separately, and
For sure.
extremely interested.
Outside, sorry to interrupt. Kaustubh, I'll make you the co-host.
Okay.
Hi, Ananya. Good to see you. Can we see your left toe just to make sure it is Ananya?
Is that Ananya or no, it's not Avinash.
It's
Oh, Avinash, I'm sorry. It looked like it first said it's Ananya.
It said Ananya, but it's
the
become...
name changed.
I see.
I changed the name. Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
It's also nice to hear Tara again after a while. I never got a chance to ask, how have you been doing now?
Still doing okay.
The fact that she's not showing her face means, more or less okay. Just the bare minimum.
Oh, God. Rashmi is here.
Yeah, so the other person hiding under the think label must be Siley, I think.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just on my way home from somewhere, so I've joined from my phone. Off video for some time.
Okay. So why is Siley hiding?
She was also outside.
Oh, everybody's outside. Hmm. So how long should we wait? 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5?
Well, it's exactly 4 o'clock now.
Yeah.
I imagine we can wait 3 to 5 minutes as people slowly filter in.
Sounds good. As I said in the message, this was supposed to be a session on causation, but when we started writing some kind of preliminary preparatory ideas, it became way too technical. It became 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages, and discovered that it was going to be a monograph on causation. And so we decided to skip that topic and maybe come back to it at a later point. Sometimes topics have that, unpredictable.
They take a life of their own.
Yeah.
And they get out of control of the moderators.
Yeah.
Actually, the discussion of causation needs a whiteboard and in-person presence. It's not for an online conversation.
Yeah. The funny thing is we had a 3-day retreat on causation in Coorg about, how many years ago was it? 3, 4, 5?
Yeah, more than that.
More than that, yeah.
7 years.
Yeah. And I think our own approach to the way to structure a causation course, those ideas have changed dramatically, so it's not going to be the same.
They've evolved.
Yeah, we have evolved, and causation has also evolved, I guess.
But however, calling these programs a retreat has not evolved.
That remains the same. Retreat.
I'm talking from the corporate point of view.
No, we also think of it as retreat because we do it somewhere where no distractions happen. So this particular retreat was in Coorg.
Intensive.
Yeah.
Just, roll in under one roof for those 3 days. And it's a continuous discussion.
Yeah. It's very monkish, actually. Not a corporate retreat, very monkish retreat.
I understand. Usually
it's more of a pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Usually it was just a stupid joke about how in the corporate world it's called a retreat, and it actually means a retreat from what you know already. You go back slightly impaired from what you know already.
Well,
Even in the academic world, they're called retreats when the entire lab decides to take a break and go somewhere to enjoy. But inevitably, if it's a 2-day retreat, 1 day will be for science where everybody presents again. So
that's not a retreat. That's simply a pleasure trip.
exactly.
Wasting
It's just to change the
ungivers'
environment
money.
and talk about the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's an idea, Mo. If this happens again, you should call it an advance.
Advancement to something is a hope. Whether or not that'll happen, we cannot tell.
I think Mahesh is going for the military term, advance, retreat.
Oh, I see. Okay, I didn't see that. Okay.
I don't know if
Or at least I think.
I don't know if retreats are possible online though.
No, it's not. It's not possible.
I'm sorry, you have me against a wall.
All the retreats that we have had began early in the morning, even before 6 o'clock. Conversations began, and then we had conversations during breakfast, after breakfast, and just flowed into the roundtable discussions and whiteboard and so on, and during lunch until everybody fell asleep.
Yeah.
Okay, I think
that's almost a conference at that point.
No, conferences don't have this magical
Conference
effect.
involves presentations. Here there are presentations. It's a free-flowing discussion. So
yeah, this is learning together.
A conference from Greece, from Socratic Greece.
Learning together.
Yes.
In a circle. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we can start.
Yeah, I guess there are only altogether there are 7 people, including Tara and me. So, but that's a good number. Let's start. So, who wants to begin? Statement, question.
He'll come back. You've given us a lot of heavy statements in this email, Mo. Man, from Rousseau onwards to Sehgal.
Yeah, that was just to kind of by way of introduction. I mean, we can ignore the philosophers and
okay.
Yeah, we don't have to know anything about Rousseau. Yeah.
Cool. Then maybe I can start with the statement where I can start attempting to dissect Rousseau's statement. Statement given is man is born free and everywhere he is in chains. So I think there are 2 concepts beginning here. One is the birth of a man. There are a lot of terms I would say that I am not really clear about yet. And the other is the concept of his freedom. So Rousseau is, I think, making a statement that from the moment a man is born, his freedom is enchained, as in freedom as a concept exists, but at the same time doesn't, because he doesn't have the freedom. He's always in chains. So the question I want to start off is, when can we say a man is actually born? Because this, I think, to some extent links back to what we spoke about last time, where we briefly touched upon the moment of conception and stuff like that. But I think that also depends on how you define a man, or maybe to generalize, a human being. So maybe we can start from that point. Or am I splitting hairs?
Maybe we can take for granted the concept of human being and explore the concept of being born.
Okay.
Yeah. So in other words, we don't have to ask whether Neanderthals were human or Cro-Magnons.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I was thinking more along the lines of at what point in a person's life would you call them a fully formed person? Because we have personalities and they keep evolving, right? Or changing. So that's why I was thinking more of an adult versus child, that kind of
newborn baby has a personality. So
how about somebody who is inside the mother's womb?
In a very real sense, they are chained.
Well, inside the womb, but don't they have the personality? Is the question. So in which case, if you say that they are imprisoned in the womb and they become free only when they are born, when they get out of the mother's womb prison, are they born free? Or do they move from one prison to another?
Like if the size of your...
Well, it depends on what kind of freedom you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is it your physical freedom, your mental freedom, cognitive freedom, emotional freedom, social? Freedom can be of many kinds. So.
But right, just to add on to that, which means that there should be some freedomness to freedom. There must be something which defines freedom, right? There must be like a tree has treeness, or okay, I'm just sort of extrapolating here, but freedomness means that there is freedom. And if we agree with what Rousseau said, that freedom exists, and then we say we are never free, does freedom really exist? It's sorry to go back to this. It seems like neither P nor not P.
Okay.
Does it have to be that, or do you want to think in terms of degrees of freedom?
Yeah, maybe I should clarify that Rousseau is a classical romanticist, and one aspect that distinguishes romanticism and classicism, so to speak, a certain aspect of classicism, is that one says it is society that makes people bad or whatever, unfree and so on. The individual is free, but society, causes change. The other is, if you don't have social constraints, man is essentially evil. So it's really, are human beings innately good or innately bad? One ideology says innately bad, but society helps the person to become, better. So this has been the classic opposition between these 2 points of view. And Rousseau was is an archetypal example of romanticism, the noble savage and all that stuff. So the question would be, do we have innate freedom which society somehow or other suppresses?
This also seems to link vaguely to the concept of free will, but I don't want to open that Pandora's box today.
Well, even if you don't have freedom physically, so I don't have the freedom to jump to the moon, obviously. And I don't have the freedom to continue living without food. There are certain physical constraints, obviously. But where exactly is the inalienable freedom that I have? And some people have argued that we have, no matter how far we have physically changed, we are still free inside our mind. We can think, freely. We can also make decisions freely and so on. But whether we can execute them is a different issue.
In which case, aren't our decisions also influenced? Our thoughts also influenced by what happens outside, and therefore, I'm sorry if I'm flogging dead donkeys. Therefore, there must be something which says, okay, this is freedom, right? Tara, I agree with you that there are degrees of freedom, but that means there is something called freedom, the degrees of which can be defined. I mean, if this is too abstract, or we can just avoid this and then go ahead.
Mahesh, that we can conceive of freedom does not mean that it exists. I can conceptualize mermaids and flying elephants, but that doesn't mean flying elephants exist. So, so let's first figure out what the concept is that we are interested in to explore.
Okay, and if you're going to talk about degrees of freedom, it is, I mean, if you think of it in terms of constraints, if you have one constraint versus 5 constraints, you have less freedom if you have 5 different constraints. So it could be, that's one way of thinking about it, not the only way. But in terms of different kinds of constraints in different dimensions of life.
Tara, I did not understand that entirely. Could you help me understand, please?
Yeah, if you have a constraint that, okay, let's say something very concrete. If there is a constraint that I cannot leave my home, I can't step out of my house for whatever reason. Could be a physical reason, physical, physiological, or it could be a social constraint, a religious constraint, whatever. Now, if suppose it comes on all 3, so social, religious, and physical constraints put together, or familial constraints, the more the number of constraints, the greater the restrictions on freedom. Something like that is what. One way of thinking of degrees is in terms of the kinds and nature of constraints on freedom. Does that make sense, Mahesh?
Thinking about it, Tara, but I think while I think about it, I think I interrupted Kaustubh.
Oh, okay.
I have a suggestion. Like if suppose we would look at a fully grown, adult, healthy animal in the wild, maybe something like a lion. Would we now that lion is free to do as he pleases? Would we consider that lion free in our concept of freedom? And if not, then what aspect of human being a human are we focusing on, which does not apply to the lion, and hence those are the aspects we are talking about when we are talking about the degrees of freedom pertaining to human beings.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to specify the dimension along which we are thinking about the freedom. So, for example, lion may have certain kinds of freedom that a rabbit doesn't have. The lion can eat the rabbit, but the rabbit cannot eat the lion. But does the lion really have even biological freedom? Unlimited, or is the lion also constrained by biological factors? So does the lion have freedom to not eat, to become completely vegetarian for 20 years?
The
lion has the freedom to say, not worry about what others think. Humans are constrained by what will 4 people say.
Yes.
So, Tara, I thought about what you said, and it seems to me that therefore, if we use the constraints, right? Therefore, there are constraints and there is freedom, right?
Yeah.
Now, a constraint, for example, if we say freedom is the right to go from, whether it's a spider, a lion, a chimpanzee, or a human, to go from a current state to a desired state, very broadly.
Yeah.
And therefore, the constraints will determine whether it is a lack of freedom or not. I am happy sitting inside my apartment and I hate going out. I don't step out I step out maybe once in 2 or 3 months. Right. But it depends on what you want, right? Therefore, the constraints are seem to be defining what one considers as freedom.
Definitely. That's it. The constraints are individually determined. It's an interaction between the outer world and what the individual desires.
Yeah, like the constraints form the backdrop against which there is or isn't freedom. So it's a freedom from constraints.
And also the constraints come into the picture if that dimension matters for that particular being. So like a lion does not have an intellectual dimension in which worrying about societal acceptances could become a constraint. So which is why then that dimension does not apply to the lion. Whereas for humans, it does.
If I may just jump in and specify, lions do live in their own societies. They have prides and groups, and they can only stay in the group within the constraints that the group imposes there. So I would say that lions do have some social constraints, just not the ones that we go through.
Right.
And this discussion has highlighted the specifically the question that Mo asked is is a lion free to become vegetarian for 20 years? I think this highlights a point that I hadn't considered before, and that point being that instincts matter as well. That while it is true that the lions can survive on vegetarian diets, like there are famous examples from the Gir reserves where lions are known to eat bamboos and grass when they want to, they do not exclusively do that. They inevitably go back to hunting, eating, and other things. So I would say that there is a chain that emerges there, that constraint or chain being that the base instinct of a lion is to some extent hunt and devour other living things as prey. So in that sense, maybe that the lion is not as free as we think it is.
And there's also the question of availability.
True.
That again constrains. Right. So.
Yeah, so the instinct also
being
can
free
be thought
from
of
instinct,
as a constraint.
So being free from instincts and which would then involve, making choices contrary to your instinct, which would involve a certain amount of thinking, maybe rational thinking. I don't know if that's the word we can use over here. Then that occurs only in the realm of human beings, or does it occur for other animals? Acting contrary to instincts after applying thought.
You brought up a great question, Chirantan.
Yeah.
Do non-humans have rationality?
I would argue there exists some rationality, but maybe that's a segue. So I'll not go down that route now.
For that, anyway, to answer that question, we have to define rationality.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we might find that even bacteria have some kind of rationality, depending upon how we define. Let me take an example. All sentient animals or sentient creatures have fear of some harm falling on them, fear of death, and so on, fear of pain. Now, if you don't have fear of pain or fear of death, then there's no courage. I mean, courage is not necessary. Courage is acting in spite of the fear. So if there is a lion coming to attack a child, if I want to save the child, I would be, of course, afraid that the lion would, harm me. But if I go in spite of that fear, so that is one kind of freedom. Freedom to act in spite of your fear. And you could extend that, generalize it to other kinds of things. That is freedom to act. There is also freedom to think, freedom to speak. So I know that if I threaten my boss, my life will be miserable. And I don't like miserable life, but in spite of that, I speak harshly to my boss. So there are certain things that humans do in spite of their knowledge that doing that will cause them a great deal. My favorite example is Bruno, who stuck to the earth revolving around the sun, in spite of the fact that you knew if he held that, if he did not recant, he would be burnt alive, and he did get burnt alive. So who has greater freedom? Who had, Bruno or Galileo?
So more, then I think this ties back directly to what Tara was mentioning. Just as there are degrees of freedom, there are degrees of constraints that one is willing to accept. See, my life might be miserable if I go to office every day. But if I speak up, I use the instinct to be free, then will my life be better? I mean, at that point of time, the constraint upon me is, will it be more or less? So it's degrees of constraints versus degrees of freedom, right? I mean, it's game theory, At the end of the day, it's which one do you want to choose? Prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah, I'm thinking instead of instinct, is the word agency more appropriate? So the two words that come to my mind when it comes to freedom is agency and autonomy. So autonomy to think, autonomy to emote, autonomy to it's coming from within, and then agency for you to be able to act on it in whatever way, affective, behavioral, cognitive. And you should have agency to be able to act on it. You should have the autonomy to be able to act on it. And one layer of kind of constraints there is perception or perceived. All of this may be just perceived. Autonomy and agency may be something that's perceived in your mind. Right now, we may completely have the autonomy and agency to completely change the shape of the earth, as we wish. We just don't know how to do that. Someone's telling us that we have all freedom, but really, we really can have more freedom. We just don't know about it in the grand scheme of things. And so there's perceived agency and autonomy. If I had to pick three words, perceived agency and autonomy, that being freedom, and everything else derives from it. And one side note on the example more that you gave, isn't it lack of inhibition as opposed to courage? Some folks have, their prefrontal cortex, a tumor in that, and the lack of inhibition creeps in. And so that also leads to actions that may denote agency to imply freedom. But is that really freedom if others are not letting him do what he wants to? So that's a mode of confusion in my mind in terms of is freedom about you acting or is freedom about others accepting? That was the other train of thought going on in my mind listening to this.
Let me generalize one of the words that you used, Rahul, inhibition. Usually the word inhibition implies fear of acting in such a way that the others would disapprove of your action. So, for example, I don't go out in my underwear because I'm inhibited. That's the typical meaning of inhibition, or even speaking. For example, when people have alcohol, they speak uninhibitedly.
Yeah.
Okay, they loosen their inhibitions. Now, there is what happens there is the socio-cognitive, socio-emotional constraints. So you can say inhibition is something that prevents you from doing certain things. All right. So if you are tied hand and foot, you are inhibited from moving from one place to another, right? The ropes inhibit you. Inhibit in this sense is a general sense of prevention. Then it becomes the same as constraint.
So sort of to bring up what Rahul said and what's been said so far, is what we're saying that freedom exists on freedom. I mean, whether it's a perception or an instinct, it exists on a sliding scale. There is no absolute freedom, and there is no, what's the opposite? I don't know, slavery. So it's a sliding scale. It's like, okay, even temperature, yeah, you can measure it down to the nth degree. I don't know what else is a good metaphor to measure. Uh, so freedom is just something
Yeah.
that flows across the entire, spectrum, and there is no absolute freedom, and there is no absolute opposite of freedom. Whatever that would, it's just perception, instinct. We just flow with what happens.
But could we say that there is such a thing as absolute freedom, which no one has? I mean, in the scale, it's just that if we try to I don't know how to say, represent uh, how many people are on what point on the scale, we can say that there is nobody at uh, the end of that scale. Because if we have a concept of freedom, then there should be something that we consider to be absolute freedom, which nobody has. I mean, then we could argue that no one has that, or there is no one occupying that spot of absolute freedom. But our concept would include such a thing as absolute freedom, which is that there are no chains holding you back.
Yeah.
Rashmi, you were talking about constraints, thinking in terms of a backdrop of constraints. Now, if none of those constraints hold on you, then that is absolute freedom, I guess, right? Within what you're saying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that never happen. That's not a practical possibility.
Yeah.
Yes.
The way I interpreted the lines, man is born free, but everywhere is in chains. I interpreted it in terms of, so when a child is born, the child is not, in some sense, constrained by her gender or her caste or class or the region where she's born in. And as she gets socialized into society, these constraints, apply, and therefore, to that extent, she's not able to be a master of her own life. She's not able to shape her own life the way she pleases. And I think that's where the question of chains come in. So when we say man is born free or a human being is born free, it doesn't mean that the human being is free from physical or evolutionary constraints, but rather that I think Rousseau is really talking about the social unfreedoms which are imposed upon specific human beings. And that's the chains Rousseau might be talking about.
In that context, I'd like to go back to what Rahul said. He said, you brought up two concepts, agency and autonomy.
Yes.
We were talking about what does it mean to say be born. I think being born involves a certain degree of autonomy, at least the autonomy of breathing, for instance. A baby, newborn baby, breathes. So to that, a minimal amount of autonomy is required in this will tie up to when we talk about what does it mean to say be born, right? So just to make a note of that.
Yeah, very
Autonomy might be a relevant concept there.
Yeah. So freedom for me would be the extent to which I have the agency to shape my life the way I please or I wish to.
Yeah.
And anything that constrains that, specifically social unfreedoms, would be a hindrance to my development as a human being.
In which case, I have this question. Is it necessary for me, Mahesh, to define freedom rationally for me to, a specific definition for me to actually know, understand, and accept that freedom exists at all? Or this is just something that I'm making up in my, for example, maybe Rahul, Mo, or Kaustubh, or anyone else they have their own idea of freedom, different ideas of freedom, and is it is it required that we all have the same definition of freedom?
There are two questions you're asking, Mahesh. One is it necessary to define freedom to explore the concept of freedom? I would say yes. Otherwise, if you don't know what we are talking about, then we will not be able to answer the question. The other is, if you are exploring a question in a community, in a team, then we have to make our concept clear to the others. Otherwise, if I use the word freedom to mean, let's say, sweet tooth, and somebody else uses the word, to mean wearing clothes or something to that effect, totally ridiculous stuff, then we will be talking at cross purposes. It's only to the extent that we have the same concept, approximately the same concept. So it is important to clarify the concepts that the words denote, otherwise we'll be talking at cross purposes, unproductive. And one way of clarifying concepts is to define it. Define it either in terms of one sentence or two sentences or three sentences, or a whole theory, a theory of freedom. That is necessary. And collective inquiry, which is academic inquiry, requires having some kind of shared theories or shared definitions. I just want to go back to something that Rashmi mentioned, the two extremes. Imagine a coordinate system where in the middle there is 0, and on the other side there is +1, and this side there is -1. And +1 and -1 are, the extremes. There is nothing beyond that. I mean, you are using a measurement system. That's all. The measurement system has a foot rule with -1 at one end and +1 at the other end. That's all. And in the middle is 0. Now imagine that you have some kind of elastic band tied to you, such that if you don't exert, you will be at 0. You will not be to the left or to the right. Now, to connect that to agency that Rahul was talking about, the greater your agency, the greater you will be able to move towards the left or to the right, depending upon the strength of the elastic band. So the stronger the elastic band, the less your freedom. The greater your agency, the greater your freedom.
Very nice.
In this coordinate system. This is just a way of thinking about freedom and absence of it.
Yeah, and we could consider there being multiple different kinds of elastic bands holding you too. So there could be the intensity of the same constraint, or like Tara said earlier, like multiple constraints of different kinds.
Yeah. Now for that, you may imagine a multi-dimensional space. I just described one dimension. Suppose you have another dimension crossing it, make it 3-dimensional, 5-dimensional, n-dimensional space. And, freedom means across any of these dimensions, you can say, I'm free with respect to that dimension, but I'm not free with respect to that. Or less freedom, more freedom.
And therefore, what we're saying is that there is some definition of freedom, even if we are not able to define it, that exists, which is absolute and common to everybody. For example, even if we take different types of elastic bands, there is elasticity. So there is, I'm not saying that we should, but it exists. Is my understanding correct?
I think if I can. So I feel what Mo was trying to say is for us to be able to say whether, like in a situation, if X is in a situation and we want to decide if X is free or not, for us to evaluate or compare our answers of yes or no, we need to be going by the same concept of freedom. So that doesn't mean that that's the only conceivable concept of freedom. Each of us could have different concepts of freedom if we were, free to make the choice. But for the purpose of this discussion, if there is one concept that we decide that, okay, for this discussion, this would be the concept that we want to consider, then we would all be talking about the same concept and not different things. Because if you say that X has freedom and I say that X does not have freedom, if we are talking about two different kinds of freedom, then that doesn't make any, I mean, we don't get anywhere with that disagreement. We don't know if our disagreement stems from, whether we actually believe they have freedom or not, or whether we are just thinking about freedom in different ways.
I really like the elastic band kind of analogy for the how freedom's tempered with agency. And I'm trying to apply that to environments that we live in. And so within a ChatGPT environment, um, there is freedom to ask. And of course, the system prompts and guardrails prevent you from asking certain things or giving you certain information back. In a classroom, there is a certain freedom to say something, but there are certain rules that limit agency. So in a very old school classroom where textbook is always right, there's a question and a model answer, then by definition, agency is limited. But in classrooms that are open thought classrooms, I mean, this is a classroom. There is no fixed syllabus, there is no fixed model answer or anything. It's learning through discussion. Now the agency is very high. People actually come up to speak themselves. They're encouraged to do that. And I'm wondering if this kind of laid some framework to create a boundary or a set of parameters to create environments and define what kind of environment do you want. And then based on these kind of parameters, you kind of define that environment, and it likely would be successful if thought in this terms of freedom.
Yeah, actually, I can take a very concrete example. I think any student has the freedom to doubt and question in the mind, doubt and question the teacher in the mind. Now the question is, given a classroom, actual classroom, does that student who questions the teacher in the mind also have the freedom to speak up and question the teacher in public? That's a different issue. That's an external freedom. The other one is internal.
Yeah.
I have the freedom to say Darwin was wrong. I mean, I have the freedom to think that Darwin was wrong. But do I have the freedom to say that Darwin was wrong? I don't think, currently our students have that kind of freedom.
So more, I can add on to that. I made the mistake actually for something else that I'm doing. So actually go through this year's 10th standard CBSE science question paper final, which is out. I would not advise anyone else to go through that in terms of freedom, in terms of what is expected and what is to be said.
Yeah. You mean you would not advise them to exercise their mental freedom as actual performing action?
No, no. What I meant is, I don't think. I mean, given that we are all here, I don't think anyone else should go through the trauma of looking at the 10th standard CBSE science question paper.
Or the math, not just the science, but also the math.
In that case, this is something I really want to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody sent us the math question paper, so that's how I'm.
But there's this. I remember reading Daniel Pink had some book, and he had borrowed from some Czech Republic author or someone in 1900s, early 1900s or 1800s. He had defined purpose, autonomy, and mastery as three things that get you in the zone where people are satisfied in their careers. And so it wasn't specifically freedom that he was kind of looking at. He was looking at happiness. Where are you? A surgeon, when he's actually making that first incision, that's pure bliss. The concentration in their eyes, they're not thinking of anything else. They're really in their zone. Someone who's serving a tennis, at a tennis match point, that's the look in the eyes. They're in the zone. Now, to be in the zone, he says you need to have autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So, of course, we have discussed autonomy enough, and I'm guessing he's kind of blended autonomy with agency. And so it's agency and autonomy. There's mastery that he says. Of course, you need to know that skill so you're confident you really know what you're doing, and that's what gives you satisfaction. But the third thing he mentions is purpose. And so a lot of things in terms of things that are unexplainable, like question papers and all of that, often has that purpose coming along the way. So if the purpose is to create obedient folks who take instructions and listen and do things, then that's the paper you'd get. But if the purpose is to create knowledge creators, then we're doing deep tech technologies and creating new things and building things ourselves and so on. Then there's a lot of then the purpose is different, and I'm very optimistic that hopefully all of these things will slowly need to change without giving students the agency of actually thinking and questioning. We'll never be able to build new things ourselves.
Rahul, could you talk about the the distinction between agency and autonomy?
In my mind, I don't know the absolute distinction, but I'll just tell you in my mind what my perception is. Autonomy is ability to think, ability to know in all directions what all you would like to do. Agency is making that extra effort to actually do it. And so autonomy is able to, even I'd say, not just think, but being able to do it. But agency is about making it happen. And I remember back in the days at Google, there was both. The autonomy came from the environment where people really were given the freedom to think, do whatever. You could do things outside your project. You could do whatever you would like. That was autonomy. But there was agency inherently built in the people that were hired. And so agency meant you don't sit still when you know something can be fixed. If there's a leaky tap, you go get something and fix the tap. You just start squirming if that's still happening. Same thing goes for a simple user interface. A Google search button is broken, you'd go and fix it. You wake up, you get up, it may not be your job, but you take the actions to make that happen. That's agency. And so autonomy may allow you to do things, but agency, that's why I resonated with the elastic band example, because agency is the elastic band that kind of pulls you towards translating that autonomous thinking into autonomous action and actual results on the ground. That's what I had in mind.
Okay.
In
Would you then, would this be a good way of thinking about it? Autonomy has to do with the mind, with the thought, and agency has to do with action.
Yeah. That's why I started with saying, it's the thinking piece.
It's the thinking, okay.
It's the thinking piece, it's the mind and action. Yeah, I think it fits well.
quick question.
Is autonomy a
What in-
subset of agency? Sorry. Is it a
No, please go ahead.
subset of,
Please
like, is all agency autonomous action? Can agency be called autonomous action, or is it action even if it is not autonomous?
Action, I think agency is action with a purpose. Action with that zeal of getting it done. I don't know what's the term for that.
Even if it is not autonomous.
Yeah.
Generally, agency is always inherent. You can't order someone to have agency. In Hindi, you call it kida. Usko kida hai, and then you would do it, right? Usko IAS ka kida hai. Then that guy will become IAS officer. You don't know how, but he would. Why? Because he has the agency to do it.
I think we're confusing agency and ability/capability.
No. Agency, capability, that's why mastery is separate. Mastery, skills, capability is separate. Agency is just the drive to get it done. I mean, drive may be another closest word I can think of for agency.
Maybe like taking initiative or something of that kind.
Taking initiative, exactly. Taking initiative.
Yeah, to do the action, to take the
Huh.
To decide to do something, be able to, that would be agency, yes. So
Yeah.
And
Let me
in
try.
which case, if it, so totally agree with autonomy, agency here. Don't these two need to be accompanied by immunity to a certain extent? Because that the result of that autonomy and agency will, I think, lead back to what Tara was mentioning in terms of constraints.
Yeah,
If
yeah, yeah.
somebody from Latehar district in Jharkhand decides to write something else for the 10th standard paper, uh, they will lose their visa to enter the actual earning population, right? I mean, but it it's also tempered by there is a third factor here. It's tempered by the immunity that you have, the degree of immunity that they have, which is in other words what Tara was mentioning as constraints.
Yeah, yeah. And that was very true at environments, in environments like a Google, old days Google at least. I don't know about current world, but in any of these, I think product companies, that comes that immunity of someone will back you up. You're never going to get beaten up for trying something with the right intent. I think that was an inherent belief that you will never get fired for taking initiative. You will make mistakes. You own up to them. Don't make them again. But that immunity did exist. I think that brings a lot of that drives agency. I think that immunity, that confidence of immunity drives agency.
Can I take a concrete example to shed light on the conceptual distinction that Rahul is making? Imagine a stone. You drop the stone, it comes down to the earth. You can say that the stone has no agency, but if it is a bird, you let go of the bird will go in different directions. The bird has agency. But if it's a dead bird, it behaves exactly like a stone. A dead bird has no agency. Now, so that's one way of thinking about agency. That is, agency is something internal. And even that bird may not have the ability, with all the intentions and so on internal, may not be able to fly to the moon where there is no atmosphere. I mean, in between, without atmosphere. Now imagine that the same bird that can fly in any direction is in a cage. The bird has agency, but it is prevented by the cage, or the wings are tied and the legs are also tied. The bird would be behaving very much like a stone or like a dead bird. Or, you could, if you want, the bird is not dead. The bird is just simply given anesthetic, is unconscious.
But it's the bird that takes initiative is the distinction, na? In this one, bird and it's very binary. But this whole bias for action or initiative drive in a bird. So
Yeah.
I think the fish in the net, that Nemo, right? In the, I forget the name of the movie now, but in Finding Nemo, those fish, are all trapped in that net. But someone takes initiative, has the
struggle.
agency
Yeah,
to start
yeah.
saying, you know what, everyone push in the opposite direction, and suddenly
Yeah.
they take the ship down, right? That's the difference of thinking on their feet and taking initiative and making a bigger drive. So it's not like they were dead. It's others were dead. It's just that they didn't take that initiative in that piece of time.
So would you then say that they are more free than the other birds who didn't have the agency? Like, is that, I mean,
I
I'm
think
just thinking about it, about whether freedom is more to do with the constraints or the agency. Because the way you put it, of how some of the fish had the initiative to break it open, but they were being bound by the same constraint, and one had more agency. So how does that change how free they were? I mean, in
Yeah.
your mind.
I guess autonomy was missing, right? So others didn't have autonomy to think that they could be free. And this one had the autonomy to think, you know what? No, there's a way. There's a way, and he felt he had the freedom to think. The other one said, we're destined to fate. This happens. I've heard it before. Fish get caught in nets, and yeah, that's the end of it. But this Nemo had the autonomy to think that no, there are other ways to live, and then he has the agency to say, you know what, I can't just do it alone. I need to tell everyone to kind of push the net. And so he takes that initiative to do that. So I guess
So,
it's both ways.
so in which case, Rahul, does autonomy come from agency or the other way around, or are these two different concepts which are not related to each other? In the sense, so I'll just say, does autonomy come from agency? Does agency come from autonomy? Or should we not be asking this question because these are two separate concepts that are not related to each other?
They seem to be independent but interdependent.
In my mind, I would have thought of those as orthogonal.
Yeah.
They're very different. But it seems like in Daniel Pink's book and all, in autonomy, he has agency kind of embedded within. I'm not sure. I should read the book again now, trying to see how he interpreted it, or maybe the original one from the 1800s. But in my mind, it's orthogonal. Just feeling it, it feels orthogonal.
However,
that concept is,
if you want to act, if you want to use your agency, you also need to take that, you have to have autonomy to use the agency, right? So this is why I said they're interdependent.
Yes, yes.
So,
Agency without autonomy is not really agency, so to say. You should have the autonomy to act. Without that, what is the meaning of agency? Will just remain an abstract thing.
I guess Mahesh was asking about the relation between freedom and agency, rather than agency and autonomy. So if you think of it, I think like Mahesh said, even the opposite is true. He said this example of finding Nemo that you mentioned. It seems like. Yeah, it seems like the causation could be the other way around as well, in the sense that because the fish felt that they had a freedom to act, and then they chose it. So rather than the other way around.
In all these cases, it may be a good idea to anchor the discussion on one or two concrete examples. Otherwise, the meanings of the words that we are using may not be very clear.
This Nemo example is a good one, actually.
Tara and I wrote an article once called Liberal Education as Liberating the Mind, or Cognitive Liberation. Our minds are in their own prison of various kinds. So, for example, the feeling that authorities must not be questioned is one such. The other is the fear of failure. Fear of failure, makes you not do anything, not take initiative to do anything, because if you do something worthwhile, there is a high chance that you will fail. So most humans are kind of tied inside their minds, and I think that is what. I was thinking. Rahul also used the word orthogonal. That's easy to define. If two dimensions are orthogonal, what you do along one dimension does not influence what happens on the other dimension. So that's what orthogonal means. Though they don't interact, they are independent. But that is different, I think, from both. Rahul, would you say if two things are autonomous, one does not influence the other?
Yeah, ideally, that would be the perfect definition of orthogonal.
This is the way Jerry Fodor uses the word autonomy. Autonomous modules of the mind or autonomous modules of the brain. What you do here does not have any effect on the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but then Tara was also talking about semi-autonomy where there is also interaction. So take, for example, the digestive system and the circulatory system and the systems of the body. None of them is autonomous. They are interdependent. And yet they do things. So they're kind of semi-autonomous, not fully autonomous, not fully dependent. They can do stuff inside.
But neither do they have agency, though.
That's
Oh,
because
they don't, yes.
yeah, that's
Yeah, if we could empower cells or maybe write some kind of DNA that enables agency. So right now DNA is shaped by the needs around it. And so you say, you know what? Oh boy, I am inside a kidney and poor guy can't, transform urine. So let me build this kidney. And so that guy would produce those proteins and then, cells around it. And suddenly that cells suddenly look like a kidney and starts processing the wastage. Now, the body inherently, every cell in the body inherently tries to adapt to what the needs of the system are. And so we are part of a whole and kind of our cells kind of demonstrate that. What if we kind of inserted a cell inside, which is like an autonomous submarine that has a freedom to kind of produce different kind of bodies, different organs, and it'll like go around the blood flow and then it'll say, you know what, I think there's a little controller needed here. Let me throw a pacemaker in here, the heart would be better, and let me throw this in here. Now suddenly you have a little, a part of a little organ that has agency within the body with the purpose of keeping you alive and happy. That'll be a pretty good improvement to the body. Hopefully, in a million years, we'll get there.
Another thing to do would be to switch the domain, and instead of looking at autonomy or interaction within an organism, think of it in a society where the entities, the cells, do have agency and a certain degree of autonomy and a certain degree of agency. So if you
so the heart cell itself,
communities, if you take communities, in the social domain instead of inside the organism, you might be able to tease out the differences better, perhaps.
So in which case, Tara, then, and going back to what Mo said about grounding it in concrete examples also, if you take two concrete examples, what Rousseau is talking about and what was shown or discussed, what was projected in Finding Nemo, is freedom autonomous in both places? Or let's take any one. Let's take Rousseau or Finding Nemo. Is freedom an autonomous concept? Whichever one works.
Freedom requires autonomy, I guess.
As an autonomous concept, as in
freedom, well, autonomy as a concept and agency as a concept, you need both those to have freedom.
Yeah.
Right?
What about collections of cells called tumor or cancer? They have more autonomy than other cells.
Do they have autonomy? Do they think?
No, that is exactly the question that I'm asking. If autonomy is defined in terms of having effect on, then the rest of the body has more effects on one another, pieces inside, but tumor cells seems to grow on their own. They have their own norms, and which is undesirable. That's why we say, oh, cancer cells. It can in fact result in the death of the body and ultimately death of the cells themselves. So would you say, given the property of cancer cells or tumor cells, that they have greater autonomy than the rest of the body, the other kinds of cells?
I think I would agree because they have fewer constraints, specifically in terms of there's a liver cell, a non-cancerous liver cell has to be at a specific location and perform a specific function, but a cancerous cell, specifically a metastatic cancerous cell can move around on its own and can reproduce and do and perform functions that is not bound by what its neighbors say.
Yeah, and violate the constraints on growth.
Yeah.
Other cells can't do that. There are some constraints on the growth, how far you can grow. But tumor cells don't care. They just keep growing at the expense of the rest of the body.
Yeah. Yeah. I like coming to the example that we gave about a student asking about doubting an instructor in an authoritative classroom. So in this case, it is not the case that they cannot do it. It is, in the sense they could still do it. It's just that they have to bear consequences. So I was wondering if the lack of consequences is something that we need to include in our concept of freedom, or the other way to go about it, it's just that the student believes that they cannot ask questions. Maybe they can, and they just need to be okay with whatever punishment they get. So I think to be more specific, either we should refine, apart from this agency autonomy, we should either add in lack of consequences, or we should say, agency autonomy to do things despite consequences.
Despite undesirable consequences.
Yeah, undesirable consequences.
Yeah. If you question your instructor, it's fairly clear that your grades will go down. Unless the instructor is little, odd.
I think freedom would also include the condition that you don't have to face undesirable consequences.
Okay.
That you are acting in spite of the consequences is a matter of taking things, but if you are free in class, then it would mean that you don't have to face those undesirable consequences.
Okay, on that note, can we call it a day?
Yeah.
It's 5:05.
Sorry, I just had one comment. So that is possibly where freedom and autonomy differ, wherein in freedom, you don't have, maybe the consequences are not there, but in autonomy, maybe despite consequences, you take action, or I don't know. All of that seems slightly confusing to me.
I think it needs more thinking about. Rashmi, you were going to say something. Were you?
Yeah, I was just, again, it's just a thought that two thoughts came to me, which I thought I'd share. One was, I was thinking about the elastic band analogy, and I was wondering how the concept of privilege interacts with all of the concepts we've talked about. Is it that some of these elastic bands are looser, and that is how privilege influences the situation, or maybe there are no elastic bands of certain kinds. So that was one thought I wanted to share. And the other thing is, I wanted to share that in the Finding Nemo example, I got a bit emotional because I thought that, do you mean to say that if somebody doesn't have freedom, they have the choice to not be enslaved anymore? And I could not, help feel a bit agitated. So like throughout the discussion, I felt neutral. But then the moment it felt like we are saying that, oh, you don't have to be enslaved. You can always be free. You're just not thinking that way. I felt like a bit upset by that. So I wanted to just share that happened.
Okay, now we haven't decided what theme topic to pick for the next. So could you guys send some recommendations for the next? Should we go back to some of the earlier ones, or should we start something new? Should we pick some particular strand that comes from here? Whichever.
I think that is for an email.
Yeah, send it.
I wonder why didn't the students show up today?
I think
too abstract.
That should have been fun.
Yeah.
There was something like 10 students from. Maybe they had some exam. They don't have autonomy.
Exactly. More, they don't exactly what I was going to say.
We could also juxtapose this with some book or something, may not be compulsory reading, but optional. Like Summerhill or some book like that, right? Where there's complete freedom in terms of the way the school runs.
Yeah.
Now, the output of students, right? They're not the toppers or the CEOs at companies, but they're happy. Now, that's the purpose that they defined for the school. And that gives a little flavor to kind of discussions like this. I'm wondering, and a lot of what I was saying was heavily derived from the book Drive. So I'm wondering if any topic, you could also give us some, while you send the 2-pager or 1 page or something, I think something to mull over so that we have some examples in our head that are common or some book that we have read that is contextually relevant. That'll be very interesting.
If this is something that students also need to can sort of follow and can read and follow, that should probably wait for another couple of weeks at least till they are done with their exams and start college.
We'll find out from the school.
Yeah. But this is a good idea of something to read before the session. And if you need more time to read, if we need more time, then maybe even meet alternate weeks if necessary. Or
maybe alternate weeks would work better.
I find that weekly, especially when you have to summarize or something like that, I'm finding it impossible to, like, for example, today's discussion, it'll be hellish to summarize.
You just have to follow the recording and do it.
Neuroscience is another one. Anything in terms of how brains should influence or interact with the real world. I don't know, anything real phenomena, or is that conceptual? You may find what is it?
Rahul, how about educational neuroscience?
Oh, nice. That'll be fun. That'll be very fun.
Yeah.
I think Rashmi did something like that, right?
That also involves students. Yeah, sorry?
I don't know. For some reason, I remember Rashmi doing something in neuroscience.
Yeah, but not to do with education. Yeah.
Right. Not to do with education. Okay.
No.
Real neuroscience. Maybe, we should then probably join the two, neuroscience in education.
Then maybe we can debate the recent resolutions that are springing up everywhere that screens should be banned up to bachelor's or undergraduate or graduate level classes in all schools and stuff. And because there are several studies that people are quoting that say that, in isolated cases where these screens were banned, student output increased, their productivity increased, and whatnot. So that might be something that will also interest the students in this context of discussion.
But, there's danger of it turning into a regular opinion debate kind of thing, a debate competition. So to prevent that, maybe offering 3 or 4 research papers that have those studies there. So all of those things that people quote, right, are coming from some studies. Now there may be holes in those studies. So looking at 5 papers and saying, with the basis of these 5 papers, can we argue this out? And that may be very interesting.
To be fair, papers will be forbidding, overwhelming.
For
school students,
maybe
this might be too much.
One paper, maybe 5 or 10 pages.
Maybe 1 paper,
Or a news article, because usually news articles have summaries of how the politicians came to this conclusion.
That's the challenge. I think news article thing, students do that enough in school. They have their debate clubs, they have their Model United Nations, they have a lot of these constructs that give them that learning for not grounded discussion. I mean, it's grounded, somewhat grounded, but I would say it's still opinion and influenced. I'd say from a think perspective, you'd want it to be research grounded.
So there are articles in something like Nature or Science where you summarize some particular research in a way that everybody can understand. And then they also cite the actual research article. So we should take something of that
kind.
That'd be
nice.
Yeah.
And just one quick point before I leave is that we are making an assumption that they will not use an LLM to crunch this and come with an idea of what the article is. I'm just saying that I that is an assumption that we are making, right or wrong.
Well, that's
No,
okay because if they learn something from it,
it's okay. It's good,
Yeah.
right? Let
okay.
them debate with the LLM and come. They'll just enhance their knowledge. Their argument needs to be sane. So
Right.
they can't fake the
Yeah.
LLM logic when discussions happen.
Absolutely. Like I said, not right or wrong, but
Yeah.
that is one thing that is it is a possibility.
No, definitely.
That's
We
what.
should embrace it, actually. We should figure
Yeah.
out how to embrace it. That's a new library nowadays.
Yeah.
So if anyone has, ideas for what books or what articles, please share on email.
Yeah, sure.
Then
I have to
Okay.
leave now. Thank you.
All of us have
Bye.
to. Okay. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. See
See you
you.
next time.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.